Hi there, I'm Richard Hill, the host of eCommerce One, and welcome to episode 186. A special treat for you this week. I speak with one of my business and mindset coaches, Tony Brooks. Now, having worked in the corporate world for over 30 years, Tony has spent the last 15 years as a leadership, mindset, and public speaking coach working with business leaders. If you stick with one episode in the next few weeks, this is the one. No paid ads chat, no algorithms in this one, just people. We're talking about building teams. We go straight into it. When things get a little tough, or you need some help, Tony steps us through his framework for dealing with negative self-talk. As business owners, we all know that we should be working on our presenting skills. Gets us in a cold sweat, some of us, but Tony steps us through preparing for his TEDx talk with no slides and how he delivered a faultless 15-minute presentation. Managing remote teams and getting buy-in from your teams, and of course, so much more in this one. Now, if you enjoyed this episode, hit the subscribe or follow button wherever you are listening to this episode, so you're always the first to know when a new episode is released. Now, let's head over to this fantastic episode. Well, it is literally 3.5 years ago since we last got you on the podcast. I'm very excited to have a catch-up. So obviously a lot been happening with your business, as we know in our agency. Obviously we work very closely with Tony on a few different projects, and Tony works very closely with our leadership team. So it's great to have you back on. I think there's a lot of ground we're going to cover. I think as an e-commerce store owner, as a business owner, some of the things that I'm looking forward to covering are the difference between success and failure. I really do believe that. You've got that commercial side of running a business, which we talk about a lot, running ads, but ultimately the people piece, scaling a business on your own is quite tricky. So then when you start bringing in people and building teams, coaching teams, and then developing people, developing your own mindset around building those teams, that's where things can get quite interesting. So really excited to have you on. Thanks for coming on the show.
Great to be back, Richard. God, I didn't realise it was only 3.5 years. It feels like longer than that for some reason. But there you go.
Yeah. So, human psychology. Obviously, we'll touch on your new book shortly. But how does the study of human psychology help humans become better leaders, Tony?
Well, from my perspective, Richard, and I think you're probably on the same page, really, is that leadership starts in the mind. You can have the greatest strategy, plans, actions, but at the end of the day, it's about how you show up. We've all got an enormous amount going on internally. It's the elephant in the room, I think, really, that we don't speak about that enough. We all have our ups and downs and challenges with our thinking. And getting your thinking into better territory means that you have a better perspective on yourself, on the people around you, on your organisation, on the external world. And I think it helps create better strategy. But it means that you're more likely to do the things that you want to do and do them well. It starts with mindset for me. It's fundamental.
I think that's the challenge, isn't it? Where you touched on, we sort of, I think quite often business owners, they'll read a lot of books, and they'll go to various courses and go on various trainings, but that showing up stroke consistency piece is the key, I think. When things are a bit tough, how you react in a certain situation, how you react and deal with a situation with a person. I think a lot of leaders find that quite challenging to keep that consistency.
Yep.
And they might step back and go, oh, God, I really didn't deal with that situation very well. But they acknowledge the fact that maybe they didn't. They knew they could have dealt with it better. But in the heat of a moment, or in the heat of maybe a quite a difficult commercial situation, we have the tendency to, sort of react, maybe not in the best interest. And that comes with experience. What would you say to leaders that maybe are a bit more emotional in their responses rather than gathered and able to sort of have a bit more of a calmer approach to situations in business?
I think for a lot of things, it's about finding some space. And that can be physical space or it can be psychological space, because our emotions can kick in. The emotional part of the brain gets triggered more quickly when you're in more triggering situations. And so it's about finding yourself a little bit of space sometimes, just to actually choose a different path with your thinking, choose a different response. Because a lot of business people, a lot of leaders out there are stuck in reactive mode. They're doing the do and they're reactive. And I think one of my sort of founding principles is that leaders are doing things too much and not spending enough time on how they think and how they see things. And that needs them to hit the pause button sometimes. It needs them to find space. It needs them to be able to reflect, recalibrate. And that's a big part of it for me.
Yeah, I think we've hit the nail on the head. It's that space piece. How many listeners will relate to just keep on going. And they know, really. I mean, I can really resonate with what you're saying here. January, February, March for me and the business was just crazy, insane. So much going on. And the last first week or two of April, I just wasn't right. I was exhausted. I was tired. I was frustrated. Felt that things weren't, some of the things that projects we were working on were like, but it was none of that. It was just I was tired. I needed a break. Just come back from almost 3.5, nearly 4 weeks of only been in the office 2 days, I think. And I feel like a different human.
Yeah.
Literally like a different person, and the person that I am more so. And I think we put ourselves through those, very intense periods. But it's I've always done that, or I do these I refer to them as like a 3-month or a 90-day sprint. But I know at the end of those sprints, I'm like, I need my break,
Yep.
No, rightly or wrongly, but I acknowledge the fact in the back of those 3-month sprints. I mean, if you're at my team, will be like, yeah, he was a bloody nightmare, not ish, Whereas you come back after the break, have a real downtime, a real disconnect. You're like, see everything almost with a different pair of glasses on, and I think a lot of business owners struggle with that, taking that time off. What would you say to those guys? I just can't take time off. I can't have that time. I'm too busy.
Well, again, then you got to look at making some changes in your business, because we're talking about finding a short period of space in terms of recalibrating your thinking. But what we're talking about here is actually finding a larger piece of space and time where you can take time out. And I over a number of years now, always aim at getting something where I'm going to have a bit of time out every quarter.
Yeah.
Because like you were saying, Richard, I think you can, this is why a lot of people experience problems with burnout. It's that continual push forwards, where we need to recharge. As human beings, we need to recharge. And it's a good time then, when you're taking a break, to come back at things with a slightly different approach, a different view.
Yeah.
And for leaders who are struggling to do that, then you need to stand back from it and think about how you're going to do that. Does that mean that you need to get further support either within your business or outside of your business to enable you to do that? Do you need to delegate more? Whatever it is. But you need to start getting on that path, because that our definition of insanity is doing the same things, expecting different results. And there's too many leaders out there doing that.
Yeah. I think a bit of advice, or a thing that I do, is beginning of the year, book a lot of holidays.
Yeah.
Get them locked in. So we usually book 5-6 holidays a year, and they're in the diary, and then, right, okay, we've got this, whether that's a 3-month, 2-month, 8 weeks period, right, okay. But at the end of that, I know I'm doing this, I'm doing that, whether that's a work trip, whether that's obviously a family trip, a friend's trip, different groups, and then they're locked in. You've got that thing to look forward to as well.
Yep.
Whereas too busy to be, hang on, 8 months has gone by, I've had no time off, or very little time off. Summer's been and gone. I could have had a nice break in the summer, even in the country that you live in.
Yep.
But obviously, I don't think there's anything better than jumping on a plane or going somewhere, and experiencing a different culture, a different place, and it just sort of brings you down, doesn't it?
Yeah. And you do really well with that, because like you were just saying then about having 3+ weeks out of the business, and you, again, like we're talking about, you've planned for that. You've made changes within the business. You and I have known each other a long time, Richard, and the business is massively transformed over the last 10 years. But there have been conscious decisions in that to enable you to get to that place. And I know that you want to be able to do more of that. So as I say, it is about making conscious choices to enable you to do that. Because the path of continual doing and reactivity and all that kind of thing only leads to one place, really, unless you start standing back from it and thinking how you're going to do things differently as a leader.
And it's like I think for the guys that are listening in, there's obviously we're talking about you as the business owner, leader, head of X, Y, Z, having time off is one thing, but then it's also you're building the business in such a way that you've built the team, the leadership team in the business that then are now running the business, or I've got the opportunity. That doesn't mean you listen to this podcast and take 3 weeks off with nothing in place, clearly.
Plan for it.
That you've got to plan for it, So obviously building those leaders within the team, how can someone become a better leader? How can you as a leader also empower your other senior teams to become leaders in the business? So one, obviously you want to become a better leader as the owner possibly of the business.
Yep.
But also empowering your team to become leaders within the business so you can also have some time off, step away, the business is less reliant on you. What would you say?
Yeah, I think both for heads of companies and when they're thinking about the leaders within their companies, I think it's about being open to grow, being receptive to doing things differently, being receptive to learn, because I think there are leaders out there who believe they are potentially the finished article, and nobody's a finished article. I think everyone is on a path of growth, leaders especially. And I think for organisations, it's making the right investment in your people as well. Because here's the thing, my background was originally technical. And the problem is that people can be really gifted at what they do, and they're expected to pick up leadership roles and start leading people without necessarily being equipped. I was very, very lucky when I was at Experian for 10 years that there was a lot of investment in my development as a leader, and which transformed me a lot. And I think that there should be no expectation that somebody can just move from being technically gifted and good at what they do to stepping up into a leadership role with no support, help, development. So individuals have got to be open to grow and develop, but organisations need to have the right things in place to support people on that path of growth as a leader, and not just expect it to happen on the job, because some of that will happen, but it needs a plan.
Yeah, I've seen that a lot, especially in the sort of industries that we're involved with, fast-paced tech, e-com, things can go from a back bedroom business, one-person owner. 3 years later, there's 30 people. The guy that was, his right-hand man packing the boxes, all of a sudden is expected to be a head of ops. Well, hang on. Doesn't mean he can't be, but, the transition from X, Y, Z to head of 20 people, that's a huge thing.
Yeah, yeah.
You start selling one order a day, next thing you're doing 500 orders a day, and that happens a lot in e-com, and that's more mechanics, big shift in marketing thinking. But then in the background, a person that sort of your right-hand guy that was packing boxes one day now is expected to look after, obviously investing in that person and those people to be trained through the different growth stages of business is absolutely key. I see it all the time. Obviously, those people absolutely can manage the business for the owner, but it's a hell of a journey, You see some, so many people we've had on the podcast that have gone from 0 to 20 million in like 3, 4, or 5 years, obviously bringing the team, some of the team with them, but sometimes it's maybe not the right thing depending on the position. And, there's a lot of sort of nimble, quick decisions need to be made. You can, in a space of 6 months, you can go, especially through COVID, for example, businesses 4, 5, 10x in a space of 6 months. Very difficult to sort of keep up with that pace, but also to keep up with and make sure you are trying your best to keep up with the investment in the team, their well-being, their ability to coach other people. It's quite tricky, isn't it? It's quite a tricky thing.
It is, and it needs time, and it needs planning for, and it needs investment.
Yeah. And
I say otherwise, you're setting people up to fail. I mean, one of the areas in my book is about imposter syndrome, and what I talk about in the book actually is that it's not known as an actual psychological classification. So one of my big messages in the book is that people don't have imposter syndrome. They have normal moments which are human, where they may feel fallible or the word of fraud can be used, or found out in a position. And one of the worst examples of that, I think, is putting someone into a leadership position without giving them a development plan, support and help.
Yeah.
Because that's going to expose those kind of vulnerabilities more than any kind of situation, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see it a lot. I see that a lot. So the book.
Yeah.
So I think, obviously, this is your second book, isn't it?
9 years ago the other one.
Yeah, 9 years, yeah. I remember we bought about 20 copies of the first one. Obviously, this is brand new, hot off the press. So tell us about the book. What was sort of the inspiration about the book?
Yeah, the book's called Survival Psychology, and it's about escaping the 5 mind traps of survival thinking. I got really interested. I mean, Richard, you know, I've been fascinated with mindset for years. I've studied it, and a lot of it because I wanted to understand what made me tick, let alone anybody else. But with this, over the past sort of 2 to 3 years, maybe a bit longer, I got really fascinated with the fact that a lot of our thinking in modern life is different to the origins of our species. The origins of our species were preoccupied with physical danger, attacks of saber-toothed tigers, making sure they got food. In modern life, the threats and dangers that we face are often more psychological in nature. Mm-hmm. And the problem is that we can exaggerate, distort, imagine threats and danger all the time. And it causes us a lot more difficulties and challenges than I believe we're aware of. And so I think it's important that people are equipped to understand what's going on for them more internally, because I think if you've got greater understanding and awareness, then you can manage that more effectively. So I look at 5 different areas that sort of can come to the fore with that. But fundamentally, it is about that. It's about getting a better handle on the fact that in modern life, we are monitoring for threats and danger, but to things like our self-esteem, our happiness, our financial well-being, all of those kind of more practical and psychological in nature. Obviously, some terrible things going on across the world where people are in physical danger. A lot of the time, certainly over in the UK, for example, for a lot of people, the challenges aren't so much about that, but that survival thinking still can get triggered because we are primed to survive. You know, we want to make sure that we survive, and a lot of it, as I say now, is about survival of ego, self-esteem, happiness, all of those kind of things.
So, what would you say to somebody that maybe is really struggling with that sort of negative self-talk? Which absolutely manned up. It's certain individuals, me included, can come across very confident, very capable, maybe not. But in here, some days, many days sometimes, if you've not had your holiday or two, some days are really tough, aren't they? And I think obviously that's what you're breaking down in the book in terms of the, different areas and different routines and things to do to help you. But, specifically, somebody in a senior position in a business that's maybe feeling, that they can't do the thing that they've been asked to do, but they more than likely can. But they're having some very likely can, but they're having some tough times, when they're sat on their own, or maybe they're sat at home feeling overwhelmed. What would you say to those guys?
Yeah, well, negative self-talk is one of the areas I talk about. And the thing is, we have, latest research that I saw, we have around about 6,000 thoughts a day. We are thinking beings. And the first thing I would say is it's the elephant in the room that we're all doing this. A lot of our thinking, majority of our thinking, is more negative, repetitive, doubtful in nature rather than being helpful. And we're all doing this internally. If we were to vocalise externally some of the thinking that was going on internally, people would, would wonder what was going on.
They don't think we're mad.
Yeah, exactly. So I think there's 2 or 3 simple things I would say here, and obviously you need to go deeper on this. But first one is, know that everyone does this, first of all. It's part of being human that we continually think and talk to ourselves internally, and often that's not particularly helpful. I say part of the reason, or a big part of the reason for that, is our thinking is designed to keep us safe. So it wants to find out where we might be vulnerable, fallible, where there could be a problem, because that's what it's about. And so we are doing something that is a normal part of the human condition. That's the first part of it. Second really big important message is that we as human beings can consciously rise above our own thinking, observe it, make choices. It's a superpower for the human species, because for us, compared to other species, we can do that at a much heightened level. That gives us incredible power, because if you are going down those paths and you take yourself back for a moment and say, hang on, why is my thinking going down this path? And I don't have to follow it. I can make a different choice consciously. Then that is a really important message for anybody listening to this to take away. That I know I had problems with, I was diagnosed with depression a couple of times in my life. Last time was 2013. And I think a lot of it was because I had thoughts and I followed them. Whereas now I know that some of this thinking that comes up every day, because I do it as well, I don't have to own that, and I can make a different choice in the way that I see things and the way that I think about things. And I'm not saying it's always easy to do, but you've got to go back to that, because that is such an incredibly important part of life as a human being.
Yeah. I think that's just so relatable. You know, my brain's going, oh God, yeah, this. You know, I've just come back from what was a 13-day event. You know, there was a bit of fun mixed in, but, you know, I had sort of 2 or 3 days of workshops, 3 or 4 days of a big conference, and then a sort of 4 or 5 day mastermind, you know, quite an intense, or very intense at times, and some days and some moments, you know, my thoughts are trying to get the better of me.
Yeah.
They're trying to tell me, do you know what? You're useless, you're boring, you just do this, you know, it's like, hang on a minute, what's all this about? Sort yourself out. You just need a little, and sometimes it's very difficult to keep straight, to keep sort of focused on the positive side. It takes everything sometimes, doesn't it? You know, when things are really like,
yep,
you know, you really feel like, you know what, I just can't do this. But when it's really sort of, I guess, very difficult, what would be your sort of final bit of advice on that?
Yeah, I mean, interestingly, Richard, what I was going to come to there was, I think, have somebody to talk to.
Yeah.
Because I use the expression, be your own best coach.
Yeah.
To talk to yourself like you would a friend, a colleague, a family member. But as you say, sometimes it's tough with that. And I think having somebody that you can talk to, I think one of the things that I bring in my work is that people can talk in a way that they know they won't be judged. They can talk openly.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important, to be able to reach out to people that you can speak about this. And I say, again, I come to it. The person that you're talking to will empathise, because they will do it themselves at times.
Yeah.
And I imagine one of the aspects that, when you were talking about your trip, one of the things that can surely trip us up is comparing to others. So ego is one of the aspects I talk about in the book, and ego can trip us up time and time again, because if we put ourselves in an environment with other business leaders, we can straight away go to, he or she's doing a better job than me, he or she looks more influential, he or she's achieved more, he and she have done all this, and you only know part of their story. But we do this really quickly. We compare to put ourselves down. And that's the trouble. We don't compare to people who aren't doing as well as us or at the same level. We're nearly always comparing to people who we perceive to be doing better than us, or have achieved more than us, or whatever, or better person than us. And again, you've got to be able to intercept this more and pick it up when it's happening, and you know, call it out for the nonsense that it is.
It is nonsense, isn't it? The conversations you have with yourself, sometimes it's just like...
Now, you might be looking for an SEO boost, a down-to-earth digital PR campaign to share your story, or maybe just some straightforward technical help to amp up your performance. Now that's where eCom Now comes in. A partner that's all about making things easier for your online store. Our services cover everything from creating professional content for your e-commerce categories to refining your product descriptions. Now, whether you're just starting out or have been in it for a while, we're here to deliver real impactful results that add to your bottom line without unnecessary commitments. You can order one-off or multiple projects with a quick turnaround. Simply choose what you need.
Right, so what we're going to do now, we're going to play
Okay.
survival psychology roulette. Are you ready? I'm gonna see where we are. So, a sheet. Moving out of your comfort zone.
Which page have you turned to there?
So I'm on page 94.
Yeah.
Moving out of your comfort zone. Now, what would you say about that to leaders that are listening now that are trying to get more buy-in from their leadership?
Okay, so let's talk about in two parts, really. First of all, about comfort zone. My perspective on that is that, and I think the page you turn to is in the defensive mindset chapter, I imagine, because the problem is in life, when we hit challenges, when we make mistakes, when new things come along, when we get feedback, we can often go into a protected bubble. And our protected bubble, our defensive bubble, is where we do feel more comfortable and safe. But the growth of human beings is when we step out of our comfort zone. But my belief is that both for business owners and the people that they are encouraging to develop, you don't want to be pushing people in an extreme way out of your comfort zone into what I would call a panic zone. You need to push people out of their comfort zone in an evolutionary way so that they can grow. So you don't take somebody who has never led any people and give them 100 people to lead. You give them a small team, and that's a simple example. But I think it's a step-by-step process to keep pushing yourself out of your comfort zones, but also help other people within. I mean, because we're always going to be experiencing this. We've been currently going through, over the last year or two, that big wave of artificial intelligence really growing in prominence. Mm-hmm. And how do leaders respond to that? Do they stay in their comfort zone, or do they start to embrace that and build it into their own strategy? So that's in relation to comfort zone. You were also talking about buy-in with your team as well. And for me, one of the things that leaders miss, I think at times, in terms of keeping their people engaged, getting buy-in on that move forwards, on that growth and moving out of comfort zone, is explaining the meaning behind things and why you're doing things. Mm-hmm. Because if you push change on people and they don't understand the why or the reasoning, people will resist that. They will go defensive. They'll want to stay in their comfortable place. But if they understand the purpose behind it, the purpose for the company, the purpose for them, how it's going to enable them to grow, then that gives people a reason to step out of that comfort zone. So getting buy-in for me, fundamentally, and the trick that a lot of leaders miss is they push change on people without taking the time to explain the reasoning behind it, the purpose, why it's going to make a difference.
Yeah, I see that a lot. Right, we want you to do this. Well, hang on a minute.
Yep.
That's quite, whereas, right, okay, so in the business, we're looking at developing this part of the business, and we think you'd be perfect to work with the leadership team or be part of the leadership team that's going to grow this part of the business so that we'll become this, this, and this. And the reason why we're doing this is a big opportunity in the industry we see. So to start with, we wanted to explore this with the team. Oh, okay. You're getting buy-in, aren't you? You're explaining, you're also showing that individual that you want them, you trust them, and you see, you want to back them to be involved in this project that you see. Something we do in our business, we get together as a team every 3 months. We just had a meeting last week to discuss, the previous 3 months, but the vision of the company. Over 1 year, 3 year, and 5 year sort of vision. And we break that down every 3 months, what the plan is for the coming 3 months, and then we review that with the whole company. Because I think what can happen in a business so often is, there's somebody here that's instrumental, really important, but they're maybe like, why am I doing this thing?
Yeah.
What's this thing I've been asked to do? How does that connect? Well, when they're shown, actually, without you doing that, John over here can't do this, that then leads to this, that actually means we can open a new this, and this. There's a whole opportunity, whether that's AI or, a whole new product set that we're focused on developing. But if they don't see how that connects, it can seem very disconnected, can't it? And demoralized and demoralizing. So, I think having that, sharing the bigger picture, is absolutely key.
And you do that really well within this company because you share the vision, but you also, people get recalibrated with new goals for themselves individually for 3 months. And so you get that cascade down then of where the company's going, but understanding what I'm doing as part of that. And it can become quite soul destroying when you're turning up at work every day and you're just doing things and you don't see the bigger picture and you don't see the potential path of growth and progress for you, for the company. So although it's taking time out for the whole of your company that you do that every quarter, I think it's been a brilliant move for you and the team. And
I mean, I think
we're
sort of 2.5 years into that process, maybe a bit more actually, and it's made a big difference to retaining team, big difference to morale. I think ultimately, if your team are engaged and your team are on board, it's a happier place, isn't it?
You can move mountains, can't you? When you work together. There's just a quick aside. There's a story in the book and something that I share often. And I watched a nature program called Super Nature a couple of years back. And just very quickly, there's a scene where there's bees being attacked by hornets. And what the bees do, they climb on top of the hornets and they raise their temperature to a temperature that they can sustain, but it burns the hornets alive. And I think that's an amazing example in nature of the power of the collective. And that's what I say. I think when you get your collective team working together, rowing in the same direction, moving in the same direction, again, you can move mountains.
Yeah. I guess that's quite, when we think about a lot of teams now, they are work from home, not work from home, work from anywhere. I've just come back from this big trip for a conference, workshop, mastermind. A lot of the theme there is sort of international teams, all over the world working for different firms, and a lot of the people that I met, work for firms that are in very different countries to where they live and they're very nomadic sort of lifestyle. What would you say to leaders, about sort of supporting their teams that are split? They're not, the traditional model of, coming to work 9 to 5. I think is done. I'm very much, I love the office and we're here in part of our office right now. We have a great environment, but we also have a lot of people that are remote, work 1 day in the office, no days in the office, 3 days in the office. I think a lot of firms are still struggling with trying to keep that team together when there is this sort of, whether you want to call it, work from home, work from anywhere, nomadic lifestyle, especially in this tech, in the marketing side of things, 100%. What would you say to leaders that are maybe struggling to keep that team together?
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think that I was talking to companies about this before the pandemic, and the pandemic really pushed this, didn't it, Richard? And I think that we've got to go through, or we're going through a mindset shift where, and I say this to leaders often, it's not about whether somebody logged on at 3 minutes past 9 or whatever. We've got to get much more focused on the results that people are delivering.
Yeah.
And are we getting value and results out of people and get less fixated on how many hours they're doing a day and whether they're in the office, not in the office? I think it's a route that we've got to go down further and further because we're on a path that won't change. And I think that the companies that remain too static with this will find it harder to both recruit and retain talent. But I think it's a mindset shift. And I think that, I think we've got to focus much more on output and results. And I think for leaders as well, I think fundamentally, we've got to get away from the fact that either people are in the office or out of the office. It goes back to communication, connection. So you've got to be spending time with your people collectively or individually. And that doesn't matter whether that's jumping on a team or a Zoom call or whether it had been in the past meeting in the office. I think sometimes leaders are using remote working as a bit of an excuse not to do the work and spend the time with their people that they would have done in the office anyway.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter about the medium and the vehicle for that. You got to get back to basics, and people need to be communicated with and connected. Probably even more so now because we don't. With this move, we're not having the same casual conversations by the coffee machine and all those kind of things we were having before. So
it's a tricky balance, isn't it? Because you can sort of see you're out of mind.
Yep.
It is it's unfortunate.
Yep.
But if you're working in a business and 20 people are in the office 3 days a week, and you're the 2 or 3 people that aren't in the office, you're not bumping into your manager.
Yep.
You're not. So then that creates, can create a little bit of a smidge of disconnect. Obviously, it can vary a lot. So it's then important that that manager, that team have got things in place to make sure that disconnect doesn't get too, hang on a minute, and before we know it, actually we haven't spoken to John in Australasia for 3 weeks. Hang on a minute.
Yeah, for sure.
What's been happening? He's been doing some brilliant work. So obviously you might not, then you could start thinking, you could think all sorts of different things, can't you, of what that person's been doing. So having those different touch points, check-ins, little team huddles, individual one-on-ones, structuring different things. Check-ins, there's obviously some tech you can use. Like you said, it doesn't really matter what you use, but you need to, there's nothing better than a conversation, really, with most things, isn't it? Which sometimes I think we're busy leaders, which we all can be a busy leader, but obviously if you then don't spend time with your team, you find you haven't really got a team after a while. So it's it's just retraining your thought process, I think. But yeah, interesting. I met quite a lot of people with hundreds, 200 of people in teams, no officers, which I guess is, it's very common nowadays, but it is quite an interesting change, isn't it? This last, I guess, 3 or 4 years specifically, we were very much, as most people listen, I'm sure, 9 to 5-ish, every day in an office. And now that's just so alien, that if we said, right, everyone's in 9 to 5, we wouldn't have a business.
For 5 days,
I wouldn't want to do that either. I like my quieter time working from home or from wherever. I sort of flick between coming in a lot and not a lot, and, have that freedom. And it's a hell of a change, isn't it? The last, 5 years probably, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and again, it's things like, even when it was everybody physically in office, I've worked at organisations where people have said, you don't see the senior team or the leaders unless there's a problem and all those kind of things. So those kind of problems were there before. And I think it's leaders making sure they take the time to show appreciation, give positive feedback, give positive constructive feedback, all of these things that they should have been finding time for when we're all physically together in offices. You just got to do the same thing. I say it doesn't matter via chat, via Zoom, via Teams, whatever route it is. You've got to do the same things you should always have been doing, really.
Yeah. So we're going to change direction a little bit. TEDx.
Yeah.
Something that I've always personally thought, do you know what, I quite fancy that. Quite fancy that, and watched, dozens of TEDx talks. But I know you obviously delivered a TEDx talk about 6 weeks ago.
Yeah.
How did you prepare for that? Because obviously that's a big thing, isn't it? It's a big thing. Obviously, I know you very well, and Tony's somebody that I've been to and still go to for advice around public speaking. And I went on one of your public speaking courses about maybe 8 or 9 years ago. Something I'm
longer than that.
Is it? Yeah. Something I've really struggled with, over the years is public speaking and speaking in front of people, and something obviously you massively helped me with, and we've put a lot of our team through your coaching and one-on-ones and different courses. So obviously the speaker to the speakers, must have been quite right, I need to do a good job, because obviously you are a speaker trainer as part of your business.
Yeah.
So how did you sort of really step it up?
Yeah, I think that, and it was an interesting one. I've done it before, but it was interesting presenting without slides as well. And because I think a lot of us use slides in some way, shape or form as a crutch. They're a visual aid, but a little bit of a crutch and a prompt and stuff. So that was an interesting journey. One of the things I did actually, and it wasn't particularly consciously, was I initially did the presentation with slides and then took them out. And then you've almost got those memories of the visual anchors as you go through your talk, which really helped me. But a big part of it, to be honest, was yes, obviously it was about getting the talk right, rehearsing the talk over and over again. But a big part of it then is the psychological preparation. because most people who are probably listening to this, they have some people maybe accomplished speakers, some maybe budding speakers, maybe not do it at all. I know a lot of people resist it because they're quite fearful of it. But there's all sorts going on again for us psychologically when we stand up in front of an audience. So the psychological preparation was really important for me for the last sort of 24 to 48 hours leading up to the event. And there were a number of things I did to get myself in a good headspace and then deliver in a way that I really enjoyed it and really, I was pleased I did a really good job with it. You know, I was really happy with the delivery of it. But there were, just to share a couple of things on that, I think I've used it a little bit in the past actually, but one of the things I tried for the TEDx talk was a bit of hypnotherapy to put yourself in a really good headspace. Because what you want to do really is declutter your head from all of the noise that could be coming in as much as you possibly can. And I've got a technique called the circle of excellence I always do, which is where you visualise stepping into your circle and reliving past experiences where things have gone really well. Because we all know this. Music can do it for us as well. I had a playlist when I was driving to the event. You won't be surprised to hear, Richard, there was a Prince track in there. But music can put you in a good headspace. But then what was interesting as well at the event was the conversations I was having with myself internally. Because it would have been really easy to get into or go down the path of, oh my God, this is so important. What if I screw it up? I'm so nervous. What if it doesn't land very well? And all of those kind of things. Whereas what I did in all honesty was, a big driving thing for me was, I kept saying to myself, you've done as much as you can now, enjoy it. Actually go out there and enjoy it. And the other thing I said to myself, which ties in with the survival thinking part, is part of my survival thinking was building this up to, you know, you could build it up to a point where you think, if I screw up here, I'm going to lose my business. Nobody will want to work with me again. All of these kind of things. But I was actually downplaying it in my brain and in my thinking. It was talking to myself saying, it's a TEDx talk, but it's 100 people in a room.
It's not the end of the world.
Yeah, my whole life doesn't depend on this. Yeah. I'm not Bruce Springsteen stood in front of 100,000 people in a stadium. So, funnily enough, I was playing it down, and in our WhatsApp group, there were 7 other TEDx speakers. On the morning of the event, they were all talking it up. You know, big day. Oh my God, you know, the big day. And I distanced myself from that and had a very different conversation with myself about it, because I was much more likely to deliver at a higher level, interestingly, by playing it down than by stoking up all of that anxiety, nerves, and excitement or what have you.
I'm getting goose pimples listening to you, because I think that just really resonates with me, having those sort of routines that you draw on. And I think a lot of people listening in, you know, it's a big thing. It can't, there I go building it up sort of thing. But, you know, public speaking in front of, whether it's 3 or 4 or 5 people, but whether it's, you know, if you're listening to this and you're building your team, you're building your business, you've got a team of 10, a team of 20, a team of 30, you're trying to influence, speak, present, persuade, you know, the things that you sell, do, whether it's a pitch, whether it's, you know, a new supplier, whether you're going to a conference to talk about X, Y, Z on the stage, being able to do that to a competent level is so important.
Great skill. It's
so important. And I think I acknowledge it's, you know, it's some people, you know, it's, oh God, I can't do that. But investing in that, investing time, understanding, like you broke a few things down there, that's some work I did about 10 years ago, that circle of excellence, picturing yourself in the circle and you are like fire, you know, remembering a time when it was really positive. And, you know, I have a sort of a set of things, you know, I draw down on times I spent with my kids when they were young and just really like, you know, I'm almost invincible, not in a corny way, but just feel very relaxed and confident. You know, and people say, God, you're just so relaxed when you speak. And sometimes I am, sometimes I'm not. But when I'm not, I know that it's not the end of the world. And I know that this moment that will pass where I'm maybe getting a bit tired, I'm talking a bit fast and I can't breathe, and it'll come back. And do you know what? It's not the end of the world. It's not the end of the world. But working on yourself, doing that skill, you And I was reading the feedback that you had, on LinkedIn. I was away when you're doing it, and the amount of people say, "Oh my God, Tony, your talk was incredible. Your story was incredible." So I was like, "Yes, Tony, I knew you nailed it."
Well, yeah, but I guess, I hoped and I intended to do a really good job. But I think, like you were talking about there, Richard, if you think about it simply, if you're going to go and do something, whether it not necessarily a presentation, a big meeting, and you thought about 3 of the worst situations you've been in your life, or you thought about 3 of the greatest things, you can shift your mindset dramatically like that.
Yeah.
And another thing I did this time, which I've never done before, and I'm starting to do it now regularly, was I recorded a message to myself in advance. So I played it on the morning, and it was a message that was all about helping me get into the right headspace. You've done some great work here. It's a big day, but it's not the end of the world. Go out and enjoy it. Primarily focus on enjoying it.
Yeah.
That you've got your knowledge. You're starting this kind of, only about 2 minutes.
Yeah.
But it was a really great thing to play to myself from a place where I was in a good headspace, when I was calmer.
Yeah.
and listening to it on the
That's
day.
brilliant. I think, if you're listening, you need to rewind. You need to step back 5 minutes, because I know every single one of you this will resonate with, that this public speaking piece, this having to present, whether it's in your boardroom to your leadership team or whether it's out at a conference in front of your first 20, 30, 100, 200 people, and I would really implore you to embrace sort of the opportunities to speak, but also to work, but to work on it, contact Tony. Obviously, Tony can help you, and there's a lot of resources, obviously, in your book as well. But I think being able to sort of feel better about speaking in front of people, it's such a skill. Yeah. It's something, even from my kids growing, my kids are a bit older now, but just simple things when I see, like, the way people parent their children and they sort of speak for them, it sort of really grates me, because I think that child's maybe going to grow up quite timid and not being able to speak for themselves. So, like, from a young age, like with my kids, I'm going off on a slight tangent, but I think it's quite relevant, that, it's quite a thing, potentially speaking, 100% in front of a group of people. So, like, from a young age, like, we'll go out for a meal, my kids are like 3 or 4, and I'd never order for them.
Exactly.
From the age that they can speak, I would never order for them, partly for this reason around speaking in front of people. Right, we need the bill. Can you go and get the bill at 3 years old, and 2 till 4, 5, 6 years old, just to give them the opportunity just to start to, in front of groups of people. When you sit at a table and someone asks your son something, oh yeah, well, he does this, he does that. Hang on, they ask the child, not the adult. And a lot of parents want to. I don't know, when they're starting out, they're younger, they're like, well, I'm not sure, but they give them the pause, let them do their thing, and let them have been able to, and then that sort of can translate then into when they get a bit older, they've had that experience of having a bit of maybe a moment where they're, but I'm a big believer in this, in our business, giving the people in the opportunity to be coached. A lot of the guys in our business, 5 or 6 of the people in this business speak on a lot of the, the e-com stages, but everybody in the business almost pretty much is asked to do a talk in time, not day one, because like you say, we don't want to go, right, you're doing a talk.
Yeah.
But, we want to invest in you to do this, and this. There's a lot of opportunity in the business, so the first thing we want you to do is research this piece and put a little presentation together to a couple of the people in the team. Yeah. Obviously that initially is quite an ask, but obviously we help them, coach them, teach them. And the difference you're going to see in your people, taking them from... Yeah, then being able to do a presentation to 2 people, to 5 people, to 10 people, and then some of them will go on to do 100 people, and the sort of the reward I get seeing my people and the people in our business and the people that have gone from this business and gone on to do X. I think, wow, I remember that person as a apprentice that couldn't speak, maybe was quite timid, and then they're on stage now. It's like, wow. So I think, investing in sort of speaking, presenting, confidence, you guys have got to do it, for yourself, for your own, for your leaders as well.
Yeah, but I mean, what's interesting there as well, for both your children and the people in your organisation, it's nurturing a path of growth, isn't it?
Yeah.
When I did my book launch event recently, one of my clients came up to me after, and he said, "Oh my God," he goes, "I'd love to be able to present like that. You know, it was almost faultless and really kind feedback." But I looked at him and I said, "You didn't see me 20 years ago when I started doing this." And I was a nervous wreck, you know, and
yeah.
And so
It's a muscle that needs to be
100%. Again, it's path of growth, and you can become better at it continuously, and that's by dealing with some of the psychological stuff. But it's just learning some techniques, picking up some new techniques, and great, as you say, to let people do it internally to a small team, then let them do it to a bigger group, and then eventually they do it externally. But nurture that path of growth for yourself and nurture that path of growth for other people as well.
Yeah. Fascinating. I think we could talk about public speaking and confidence on a whole other episode. Well, thanks for coming on the show. It's been great catching up. Last couple of questions. Okay. So, what would you say the future of work looks like?
Oh, wow. If we had a crystal ball, eh? Well, I think like we were touching on earlier, Richard, I think that move to remote hybrid working, I think the Generation Z and beyond are going to be demanding that now, really. So I think companies have got to start shifting their mindset with that, I think, and embrace the positives in that. That's the way to do that. And then obviously we've got the whole journey with AI, which is going to be fascinating. And let's keep cautiously optimistic with that. That can liberate companies and people from doing some of the more basic, mundane, boring chores, and we can use that as a tool to enable us to do more exciting, creative, interesting things as part of our work life, and maybe actually over time give us greater work-life balance as well. That we should be seeking to embrace the positives that can bring us. So I think none of us know what business is going to look like in 5 to 10 years, really. But those couple of paths, I think, are definitely part of it.
I think there's quite a theme there, isn't it? Embracing change.
Yeah.
We've got this change of, work location, should we call it, or the hybrid, or whatever you want to call it. We've got AI coming through. You can go, no, we're not doing that. No, we're not doing that. We've got no team, and you're probably left behind on your productivity.
Yeah.
So doesn't mean you have to go all in, but you've got to have a dippy toe, more than dippy toe. Try. Oh, actually, we can actually save a day with AI. Actually, our team are really happy now. They're working 2 days at home, and actually, they're doing more work than they were before. Well, that's not what we thought would happen. Well, no shit, Sherlock. Sort of thing. Okay, so last of two very important questions.
Okay.
Obviously, we both know that we are almost, I would say, the world's biggest Prince fans. What is Prince's best ever song?
You've got to go Purple Rain.
Purple Rain.
You've got to go Purple Rain, especially some of the sort of 20-minute live versions of it with extended guitar solo. And I love all of Prince's. Well, I love most of Prince's catalogue, but you've got to go Purple Rain.
I'm with you. I think I'm with you. It's right up there. Final question, Tony. I like to ask every guest if they've got a book that they will recommend. Any books you would recommend to our guests? Any particular books you'd recommend to our guests?
Thank you for queuing me up. Actually, I would genuinely recommend my new book. It's called Survival Psychology: Escaping the 5 Mind Traps of Survival Thinking, because I think already the feedback I'm getting on the book actually is I've designed it to be hopefully a reasonably easy read, and it's very practical. So there are a lot of tips and advice throughout the book. But I also think that it's quite a unique way of looking at things. I'm not saying I'm the very first person who's ever talked about survival thinking, for sure. But there's only one other book on Amazon with the title Survival Psychology that was written about 30 years ago. It's nothing to do with what I'm talking about. So it is a very different way of looking at the challenges that we face with our thinking internally. And I think it gives people a very deeper, different understanding of what's playing out there. And for me, understanding is power. Again, I use the phrase, it's not about feeling the fear and doing it anyway. It's about understanding the fear first. And that's what gives people or human beings greater power. And that's definitely been a driving purpose of me writing the book, is to help people get a better understanding of what's going on, to block them, hijack them, hold them back, so they can deal with that more effectively and release more of their potential.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. I will be busy this weekend. Having a good read.
I'm going to give you a test on Monday morning.
No, I think it's knowing you as I do. Obviously, you've been working with the business now for sort of 12, 13 years, and everything just resonates. Being able to understand when certain things, whether we're going to call that fear, whether we're calling that, we're self-talk, all the different things that we come across as human beings, as leaders, as aspiring leaders in a business, being able to have those, whether it's a routine or just think, right, okay, this is coming, is it? This will pass.
Yeah.
Just being able to have those techniques and some techniques, and then to embrace and want to develop yourself. So, it's just so rewarding as a leader to know that, this will pass, and it does pass. And then I've got the tools to deal with this situation, this people situation, this level of stress, if you want to call it that, or whatever comes along, to be able to keep building, and have that mindset to keep building those tools, that tool set in your mind. It's exciting. Yeah.
And I think it's not expecting so much of you. So I think you, right at the beginning, Richard, you were talking about consistency. I think it's knowing deep down as well that we aren't going to be necessarily consistent. We are going to ebb and flow a bit, and we're going to have times when we feel on fire and fired up, and then other times where it's more difficult. And it's particularly when things are more difficult that it's good to be able to know you've got some coping strategies and ways of handling that. But we're all human. We all ebb and flow a little bit and go up and down. It's part of the normal human condition.
And get your holidays booked in.
Definitely. Definitely.
Well, for those that want to buy the book, where can they get the book, and where can they find out more about yourself and your consultancy side of the business?
Yeah, I mean, the book's on Amazon and Waterstones. You can get a copy of it online there. In terms of me, it's always best really to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm Tony Brooks, a leadership psychologist on LinkedIn, and always happy to get a message, a question, if I can help anybody with, quick fire question or whatever. There's something that's troubling them, bothering them, or we can have a quick call if you want to dig a bit deeper into something. Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure.
And a total pleasure for me as well.
Cheers.
Thanks, Richard.
If you enjoyed this episode, hit the subscribe or follow button wherever you are listening to this podcast, so you're always the first to know when a new episode is released. Have a fantastic day, and I'll see you on the next one.